Welcome to Passions Illustrated. Before starting the video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. The glass of whiskey reflected Lucas Crawford's tired face as he watched from across the elegant Pier 76 restaurant in Seattle, his ex-wife Rebecca laughing at Michael Thompson's words. The soft lights of the establishment created shadows that danced across the couple's table, while the sound of the live piano seemed to mock their loneliness. It had been exactly 3 months since the divorce was signed, and Rebecca was already publicly involved with one of the most influential men in the Pacific Northwest real estate market. Lucas adjusted his tie, feeling the weight of the worried gaze of his friend Nathan Parker sitting across from him. "You need to stop torturing yourself, Luke," Nathan said, pushing his plate of grilled salmon aside. 3 months have passed. Seattle is too big for you to keep bumping into them accidentally." Luke looked away from the couple, focusing on his friend. "It's not that I have legitimate business here. The law firm isn't going to run itself." But even as he uttered the words, he knew he was lying to himself. The sound of Rebecca's melodious laughter rang through the room again, making his stomach turn. She looked stunning in her navy blue dress, her dark brown hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders. Michael Thompson, in his impeccable Italian suit and million-dollar smile, leaned towards her as if she were the only person in the restaurant. "Did you hear that Amanda Thompson is back in town?" Nathan commented, casually studying Lucas' reaction. The name hit the table like a bomb. Amanda Thompson, Michael's ex-wife, known for her contemporary art gallery on Capitol Hill. Lucas knew Amanda. Of course, Seattle was too small when it came to the social circle of the elite. "I thought she was in New York," Lucas replied, trying to keep his tone casual. "She came back 2 weeks ago. She reopened the gallery." Nathan paused significantly. "She asked for you." Lucas felt his heart speed up slightly, remembering the last charity event where he had met Amanda 3 weeks before their divorce. The conversation they had had in the Winter Garden away from prying eyes still echoed in his mind. Across the restaurant, Michael stood up, holding out his hand to Rebecca. The diamond ring on her finger caught the light, sending bright reflections up the wall. Lucas watched as they made their way to the exit, Michael guiding her with his hand behind his back, a gesture he used to make himself. "The gallery is having an opening tomorrow night," Nathan continued, apparently oblivious to his friend's inner torment. "Amanda personally asked me to make sure you were there." Lucas finally turned his attention completely away from Rebecca, meeting Nathan's questioning eyes. "Why would she do that?" "Maybe because she understands exactly how you feel." Nathan arched an eyebrow. After all, she went through the same situation with Michael. The silence that followed was filled only by the soft jazz that was now playing in the background. Lucas swirled the amber liquid in his glass, lost in thought. The thought of seeing Amanda again stirred contradictory feelings in his chest. "Rebecca will be there," Nathan added softly. "With Michael." "Are you trying to convince me to go or not to go?" Lucas asked with a half smile. "I'm trying to make you see that life goes on, and that maybe, just maybe, the universe has an interesting sense of humor." Lucas let out a long sigh, remembering the moment he met Amanda that night in the Winter Garden. How she had seemed so strong, so resilient, even though she had been through the same kind of betrayal. How her green eyes seemed to understand every unspoken word. "What time was the opening?" he finally asked. Nathan smiled, satisfied. 8 o'clock. I'll pick you up at 7:30. As they paid the bill and prepared to leave, Lucas couldn't help but think of the intricate web that fate was weaving. Rebecca in Michael's arms, while Amanda returned to Seattle just when he needed someone who understood his pain. On the way home, driving through the wet streets of Seattle, Lucas thought about how drastically his life had changed in just 3 months. The apartment in Queen, and once full of laughter and plan for the future, now seemed too big, too empty. Parking in the underground garage, he noticed a message on his cell phone. It was from Amanda. "Hope to see you tomorrow. Some wounds only heal when shared with those who have felt the same pain." Lucas stared at the screen for a long moment, feeling something awaken in his chest, something that wasn't exactly hope, but perhaps his distant cousin. Tomorrow would be a new day, and for the first time since the divorce, he was looking forward to seeing what it would bring. Climbing up to his apartment, he stood on the balcony, watching the city lights reflected into Bay. Seattle, with all its rain and melancholy, seemed especially appropriate for his current situation, but perhaps, as the city always did, after the rain would come the sun, and maybe, just maybe, Amanda Thompson was the ray of sunshine. He didn't even know he was looking for. The Thompson Arts Gallery shone like a sparkling jewel on Capitol Hill that Friday, Evening. Lucas adjusted the knot of his burgundy tie. As Nathan parked the car, the place was unrecognizable. Amanda had completely transformed the space during her absence in New York, replacing the old white walls with a deep shade of lead gray that made the works of art practically pop. "You're tense," Nathan observed, switching off the engine. "There's still time to give up." Lucas shook his head, his fingers drumming unconsciously on his knee. "No, I have to face it at some point." As they entered the gallery, the buzz of elegant conversation and the clink of champagne glasses filled the room. Lucas immediately noticed Amanda across the hall, looking stunning in a red dress that contrasted with her fair skin. She was chatting animatedly with a group of art critics, her graceful gestures emphasizing every word. Lucas Crawford. A familiar voice greeted him. It was Sophia Chin, an art curator and Rebecca's old friend. "I didn't expect to see you here." The art world has always been more Rebecca's territory, he admitted, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. "But I'm trying to expand my horizons." Sophia cast a meaningful glance in Amanda's direction. "Interesting horizons, I must say." Before Lucas could reply, a murmur went through the gallery. Michael and Rebecca had just arrived, she resplendent in a golden dress that seemed to capture all the light in the room. Lucas felt his stomach twist into a familiar knot. But this time something was different. The pain was still there, but more distant, like an echo of something that no longer consumed him completely. "Lucas," Amanda's voice surprised him, and he turned to find her green eyes studying him with a mixture of concern and something else he couldn't define. "You came. A promise is a debt," he replied, trying to keep his tone light. "The transformation of the space is impressive," Amanda smiled, and for a moment Lucas completely forgot about the presence of his ex-wife in the same room. "Come on, I want to show you something." She led him through the gallery, past several contemporary works until they reached a smaller, more private room. A single painting dominated the main wall, a large canvas depicting two figures standing back to back, observing a stormy horizon that gradually transformed into a clear sky. "I call this work transition," Amanda explained, her voice soft. "I painted it during my first months in New York after my divorce." Lucas studied the painting, feeling strangely connected to the image. "It's powerful the way the darkness dissipates." "That's exactly how it happens," she added. "Not all at once, but gradually. One day you wake up and realize that the storm has passed." The moment was interrupted by the sound of approaching heels. Rebecca stopped in the doorway, her face showing surprise at seeing the two of them together. Michael was right behind her, his expression unreadable. "Amanda," Rebecca greeted, her voice controlled. "The exhibition looks wonderful." "Thank you, Rebecca," Amanda replied with a professional cordiality that Lucas admired. "Michael, I'm so glad you could make it." The air in the small room was thick with unresolved tensions and unspoken words. Lucas realized he was witnessing a scene that could easily turn into a social disaster, but Amanda kept control of the situation with admirable grace. "I was just showing Lucas some of the work I produced in New York," she continued softly. "The city has a unique energy for artistic creation." Michael nodded, his arm possessively around Rebecca's waist. "I always knew you'd find your way in the Big Apple. You've always had too much talent for Seattle." The comment carried a subtext that didn't go unnoticed by anyone in the room. Amanda just smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sometimes you have to lose yourself to find yourself, don't you?" Lucas observed the exchange of glances between the espouses, noticing layers of history that he didn't yet know. Rebecca looked uncomfortable, her fingers playing nervously with the diamond ring. "If you'll excuse us," Amanda said softly, "I need to show Lucas the rest of the exhibition. We have a lot to talk about." Art. As they walked away, Lucas felt the weight of Rebecca and Michael's gazes on his back. Amanda led him to a discreet terrace on the second floor of the gallery, where the evening air offered a welcome relief from the tension inside. "Sorry about that," she said, leaning on the parapet. "I didn't mean to create an uncomfortable moment." Lucas joined her, watching the city lights. "You handled the situation better than I ever could." "Practice," she laughed softly. "After a while you learn to navigate these turbulent waters with a little more grace." The silence that followed was comfortable, filled only by the distant sounds of the city and the soft music coming from downstairs. Lucas realized that for the first time in months, he wasn't thinking about Rebecca, but about the woman next to him, who somehow understood his journey perfectly. "Amanda," he began, turning to face her. "Why did you invite me today?" She studied him for a moment before answering. "Because when I saw you in that winter garden 3 months ago, I recognized in your eyes the same pain I've seen in mine for so long. Because sometimes the best medicine for a broken heart is the company of someone who has." already mended their own. Her words reverberated deeply in Lucas, awakening emotions that he had kept carefully guarded. The evening was just beginning, and he had the feeling that this would be just the first of many meaningful conversations with Amanda Thompson. A week after the vernissage, Lucas met Amanda again in a small cafe. In Pioneer Square, the place, a discreet establishment called the Copper Kettle, was known for its intimate atmosphere and live jazz. On Sunday afternoons, sitting at a far table, the two shared stories about their respective divorces, finding surprising comfort in their mutual understanding. "It's funny," Amanda commented, absent-mindedly stirring her jasmine tea, "how Michael always had a particular way of making people feel special even when he was about to break their hearts." Lucas nodded, recognizing the pattern. "Rebecca mentioned something similar about in the day. She left me like he had this gift of making everything seem inevitable." The soft sound of the saxophone filled the silence between them, carrying melancholy notes that seemed to echo their thoughts. Amanda leaned forward slightly, her green eyes fixed on Lucas with an intensity that made him hold his breath. "Do you know what's most ironic?" she asked, a bitter smile playing on her lips. "Michael wasn't always the successful man he is today. When we got married, he was starting from scratch. I financed his first ventures with my father's inheritance." The revelation took Lucas by surprise. "Rebecca doesn't know that, I'm sure." "No, she doesn't, just as she doesn't know that the gallery she admires so much was built with my money." Amanda paused, taking a sip of her tea. "But that's not what bothers me. What hurts is how he manages to rewrite history, to make it seem like he's always been the hero of his own narrative." Lucas felt a pang of guilt when he realized that he was developing feelings for Amanda. Was it too soon? Was he just projecting his pain onto someone who shared similar experiences? "I have a confession to make," he said softly. "Ever since that night in the gallery, I can't stop thinking about you." Amanda froze for a moment, her cup suspended in midair. "Lucas, I know it's complicated. We're the spouses of people who are now together. It sounds like some kind of badly written drama. But it's real," she added, carefully placing her cup on the table. "I've been thinking about you too." The moment was interrupted by Lucas's phone vibrating. It was a message from Nathan. "Rebecca is pregnant. Michael just announced it at the company dinner." The world seemed to slow down. Lucas felt the air leave his lungs, as if he had been punched. Amanda, and noticing his change of expression, reached across the table, touching his fingers gently. "What happened?" He showed her the message, watching as her eyes widened slightly before her expression softened in understanding. "Oh, Lucas, I'm so sorry. It shouldn't affect me so much," he murmured, running his free hand over his face. "We were already separated. She's moved on. I should what not feel anything." Amanda squeezed his hand tighter. "There's no manual for that, Lucas. There's no deadline for processing pain." The jazz in the background changed to a softer, almost melancholic melody. Lucas looked down at his hands intertwined on the table, feeling an internal conflict between the pain of the news and the comfort of Amanda's touch. "Come with me," she said, suddenly standing up and pulling him by the hand. "I want to show you something." They walked a few blocks until they reached the pier where the sun was beginning to set over Elliott Bay. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange, reflecting off the calm waters like an impressionist canvas. "When Michael left me," Amanda began, leaning on the guardrail, "I came here every day to watch the sunset. There was something comforting in knowing that no matter how much my world was falling apart, the sun would continue to set and rise every day." Lucas observed her profile against the golden light of twilight, noticing how she looked stronger and more beautiful than any photo he had ever seen of her in the social columns. "Amanda," he said softly, "what if we're making a mistake? What if this is just our way of dealing with the pain?" She turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the last of the daylight. "What if it isn't? What if, for some twisted reason of fate, we had to go through all this to find each other?" Before Lucas could reply, his phone vibrated. Again, this time it was a message from Rebecca. "We need to talk. It's important." The universe seemed to be testing their limits, throwing a series of coincidences and confrontations their way. Amanda noticed his hesitation and smiled understandingly. "Go on," she said. "Some conversations need to take place before we can really move on." Lucas nodded, but before he left, he did something that surprised them both. He leaned over and kissed her softly on the lips. It was a brief kiss, almost chaste, but full of unspoken promises. "Meet me here tomorrow," he whispered, same time. As he walked away, Lucas felt as if he was on the threshold of something significant. The sun finally disappeared over the horizon, plunging Seattle into its characteristic bluish twilight. The conversation he would have with Rebecca hung like a dark cloud over his mind, but for the first time in months, he felt he could weather whatever storm came his way. Rebecca's apartment in the Belltown district was exactly as Lucas remembered it elegant and minimalist with a panoramic view of the Space Needle. As he sat on the white leather sofa, his restless hands drummed on his knees. The kiss with Amanda still burned on his lips, a sweet memory that now seemed almost surreal in the face of the imminent conversation. Rebecca emerged from the kitchen, carrying 2 cups of tea, a quirk she had kept since her college years at Yale. "Thanks for coming, Lucas," she said, taking a seat opposite. Her face was paler than usual, and her hands trembled slightly as she set the cups down on the coffee table. "Nathan told me about the pregnancy," Lucas said softly, deciding to get straight to the point. "Congratulations." Rebecca bit her lower lip, a gesture he knew well it was her sign of nervousness. "Actually, that's what we need to talk about." She paused, taking a deep breath. "I'm 14 weeks along." The world seemed to freeze for a moment. Lucas did the math, mentally, his heart racing as the realization hit him. 14 weeks meant the baby is yours, Lucas. The words fell like stones in the silence of the room. Lucas stood up, abruptly walking over to the window. The city shone below, oblivious to the drama unfolding on the 30th floor. "Did you know?" His voice came out harsher than he had intended. "When you signed the divorce papers, did you already know?" "No," Rebecca replied, her voice shaking. "I found out 3 weeks ago. I didn't know how to tell you." "But Michael, he knows. I told him last night." Rebecca stood up, approaching cautiously. The announcement of the company dinner was his idea to avoid speculation. Lucas let out a bitter laugh. Of course it was Michael Thompson, always in control of the narrative. He turned to face her. "And what happens now?" "Michael wants to raise the baby as his own." Rebecca ran her hand over her still discreet belly. "He says he can give us a life that you..." "Don't finish that sentence," Lucas interrupted, his voice dangerously calm. "Don't you dare suggest that I can't be a good father to my own child." The silence that followed was heavy, laden with years of shared history and shattered dreams. Lucas thought of Amanda, of their recent kiss, of the irony of how life had connected them through similar circumstances. Now this new development threatened to further complicate the web of relationships they had woven. "I'm going to fight for custody," he finally declared. "I won't allow Michael Thompson to raise my child as his own." "Lucas, please," Rebecca pleaded. "We can resolve this civilly. Michael has connections, resources, and I have rights." His voice echoed through the apartment. "I'm a lawyer, Rebecca. I know exactly what my rights are as a father." Just then his phone vibrated. It was a message from Amanda. "Is everything okay? I'm worried." The irony of the situation didn't escape him. There he was, discovering that he was going to father a child with his ex-wife, while developing feelings for her current partner's ex-wife. Seattle seemed too small to contain so much drama. "I need some air," Lucas muttered, heading for the door. "My lawyer will be in touch with you tomorrow." "Lucas," Rebecca called out when he was already at the door. "I'm so sorry for everything." He paused for a moment but didn't turn around. "Me too, Rebecca, me too." In the elevator, Lucas quickly typed a message to Amanda. "Can we meet now? I need to tell you something important." The reply came almost instantly. "Cary Park, 30 minutes. The park, known for its spectacular views of the city, was practically deserted at that time of night. Amanda was already waiting for him at the gazebo, her hair dancing gently in the evening breeze. When she saw him approaching, her smile faded, replaced by concern. "Lucas, what happened?" He told her everything about the pregnancy, about Michael wanting to raise a son, about the fears and anger he felt. Amanda listened in silence, her green eyes never leaving his face. "What do you intend to do?" she finally asked. "Fight," he answered without hesitation. "But that changes everything between us, doesn't it?" Amanda stepped forward, touching his face gently. "Only if we let it change. Michael tried to rewrite my history once. I won't let him do that to you too." The kiss they shared then was different from the first, deeper, more urgent, full of promises and future challenges. When they parted, the whole city seemed to glow brighter. "Let's face this together," Amanda whispered against his lips. Whatever the outcome, Lucas hugged her tightly, feeling that despite the chaos his life had become, he had found a safe haven. The wind blew stronger, now carrying with it Amanda's jasmine perfume and the promise of battles to come. The news of Rebecca's pregnancy spread through Seattle's high society like fire through dry straw. In less than a week, social circles were buzzing with speculation about the baby's paternity, especially after the sudden change in Michael Thompson's behavior, who canceled several important appointments and was rarely seen in public. Lucas was in his office on the 20th floor of the Columbia Center when Jennifer, his secretary, announced an unexpected visitor. "Mr. Thompson is here to see you," she said, her voice betraying concern. Lucas closed his eyes for a moment, mentally preparing himself. Cinnamon Michael entered the room with his usual imposing bearing, although his deep circles under his eyes betrayed a bad night's sleep. "We need to talk, Crawford, about how you plan to steal my son too." "Lucas?" replied, deliberately remaining seated. Michael ignored the provocation, sitting down in the chair opposite the table. "You and Amanda, it's getting serious, isn't it?" The question took Lucas by surprise. "I don't see how that's any of your business." "On the contrary," Michael leaned forward, his eyes fixed on Lucas. "Rebecca is pregnant with your child. You're involved with my ex-wife. All of this connects us in ways we can't ignore." "What exactly do you want, Michael?" "A deal." Michael pulled an envelope from his jacket. $15 million in exchange. You give up your parental rights and move away from Seattle. And Amanda. Lucas felt his blood boil. He stood up abruptly, his hands resting on the table. "Do you really think you can buy everything and everyone? It's not about buying, Lucas. It's about doing what's best for everyone. Rebecca will have the life she deserves. The child will have a guaranteed future. And you." Michael paused meaningfully. "You'll be able to start again, anywhere you wish. And Amanda, have you thought about what she wants?" Michael smiled a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Amanda has always been able to manage on her own. But do you really think she's going to want to be with the father of her ex-husband's current wife's child? That's the stuff of Mexican soap operas." Crawford. Before Lucas could reply, his phone vibrated with a message from Amanda. "We need to talk. It's urgent. Think about my proposal," Michael said, getting up. "You have 48 hours, ass." Soon as Michael left, Lucas called Amanda. She asked to meet him at Volunteer Park, a place that had become special to them. Over the last few weeks, the park was surprisingly empty. For a Thursday afternoon, Amanda was waiting for him near the conservatory, her golden hair reflecting the late afternoon sunlight. Something in her posture made Lucas' heart squeeze. "Michael visited you," she said as soon as he approached. It wasn't a question. "How did you know?" "Because he did the same to me an hour ago." Amanda ran a hand through her hair, a nervous gesture that Lucas had already learned to recognize. "He offered to restore my gallery to its original name and give me back full control of operations." Lucas felt his stomach sink. "In exchange for getting away from you," she laughed humorlessly. "Apparently our relationship is unnecessarily complicating an already delicate situation, Amanda." Lucas took a step towards her, but she held up a hand, stopping him. "There's more." Her voice shook slightly. "I'm pregnant, Lucas." The world seemed to stop for a moment. The distant sound of traffic, the rustle of leaves in the trees, everything faded into the background as Lucas processed the information. "Are you sure?" Amanda nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I've been tested 3 times. I'm 6 weeks along." Lucas crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, taking her in his arms. Amanda buried her face in his chest, her tears wetting his shirt. "It changes everything, doesn't it?" she whispered. "It only changes what we allow it to change," Lucas replied, repeating the words she herself had said to him days ago. "Michael can't control our lives." Amanda pulled away, slightly looking into his eyes. "2 babies, Lucas. You're going to have 2 children with 2 different women in a matter of months. And I'm going to love them both equally," he stated with conviction. "I won't let Michael Thompson dictate how our story should be told." The sun was beginning to set, painting the Seattle sky in shades of pink and purple. Amanda snuggled back into Lucas' arms, and for a moment, despite the chaos that surrounded them, everything seemed perfectly aligned. "Let's face this together," Lucas murmured into her hair, "whatever the outcome." As the day died on the horizon, they both knew that the real storm was just beginning. Michael Thompson was not a man to accept defeat easily, and Rebecca, well, Rebecca still had her own revelations to process. Life had woven a complex web of relationships and consequences, but in the midst of the chaos, Lucas and Amanda had found something real, something worth fighting to preserve. Now, with a baby on the way, the stakes were even higher. The challenge would not only be to confront Michael and his manipulations, but also to find a way to make this new family work with all its complexities and nuances. And as the sun disappeared completely over the horizon, Lucas knew that the only thing that was certain was that nothing would be simple. From now on, the news of the second pregnancy hit the law firm where Lucas worked like a bombshell. Whispers in the corridors and furtive glances followed him wherever he went. His once impeccable reputation was now tarnished by a web of scandals that seemed to grow by the day. Nathan found Lucas in his office on a particularly tense morning a week after Amanda's revelation. "The partners want a meeting," he announced bluntly. "They're worried about the image of the firm." Lucas massaged his temples, feeling the familiar headache coming on. "When in an hour, and Lucas, Michael Thompson is among the key clients threatening to leave us." The ploy was obvious. Michael was using his influence to pressure Lucas from every possible angle. Thompson's real estate empire represented a considerable slice of the firm's profits. "He won't stop until he gets what he wants," Lucas muttered, more to himself than to Nathan. "And what exactly does he want?" "Control over everything and everyone." Lucas stood up, adjusting his tie, but he didn't count on one variable in his perfect equation. Amanda, Nathan added, understanding. Lucas nodded. And now our baby. The meeting with the partners went exactly as Lucas had expected, tense and full of veiled ultimatums. Sitting at the imposing mahogany table in the meeting room, he listened in silence as William, Hartley's senior partner, outlined the firm's concerns. Understand, Crawford, Hartley said, his condescending tone barely disguised. It's not just about you, it's about the reputation of all of us. My personal life doesn't affect my professional competence, Lucas replied firmly. But it does affect our image, and right now your situation is becoming a public spectacle that we can't afford to sustain. Before Lucas could reply, his secretary interrupted the meeting. Mr. Crawford, Rebecca Thompson is here. She says it's urgent. The silence that followed was deafening. Lucas met the partners' surprised gazes before standing up. Excuse me, gentlemen. Rebecca was waiting for him in reception, visibly upset. Her face was pale, and her hands trembled as she clutched her designer handbag. We need to talk in private, she said as soon as she saw him. Lucas led her into his office, closing the door behind him. Rebecca immediately started pacing back and forth, a habit he knew well from their married days. Michael's planning something, she finally said, stopping to stare at him. Something big? What are you talking about? I found documents in his office. He's moving assets, preparing the ground for something. Rebecca hesitated. And I overheard him talking on the phone about Amanda. Lucas's heart raced. What kind of conversation? He's looking at her past in New York, looking for something he can use against her. Rebecca moved closer, lowering her voice. Lucas, you need to protect her and her baby. The mention of the baby made Rebecca look away, her hand instinctively landing on her own, now more visible belly. Why are you telling me this? Lucas asked softly. Because she took a deep breath. Because maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I allowed Michael to manipulate me the way he did Amanda years ago. At that moment, Lucas's phone vibrated with a message from Amanda. We need to talk. Michael has just left the gallery. It's important. Go, Rebecca said, noticing his worried expression. But Lucas, be careful. Michael is not the man he pretends to be. Lucas wasted no time. Within 15 minutes, he was at Amanda's gallery on Capitol Hill. The normally vibrant space was quiet, the lights dimmed. He found Amanda sitting in her office holding a brown envelope. He brought these, she said as soon as Lucas entered, her voice shaking slightly. Photos from my time in New York, private moments that no one should have. Lucas took the envelope, his blood boiling at the sight of its contents. This is blackmail. He said he'll destroy my reputation if we don't cooperate. Amanda stood up, walking over to the window. He said he's going to make sure I lose the gallery, that no one trusts me in the art world anymore. Lucas came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her. I won't let that happen. It's not just that. Amanda turned to face him. He's threatened to use his influence to make sure you lose custody of your son with Rebecca. He said he has judges in his pocket. The anger Lucas felt gave way to cold determination. Then it's time to turn the tables. How Rebecca came to see me today. It seems Michael isn't as untouchable as she thinks. Lucas picked up his phone. And I have some contacts in the prosecutor's office who would be very interested in investigating certain real estate transactions. Amanda studied him for a moment before nodding. Are we going to fight? We're going to fight, he confirmed, pulling her closer. Not just for us, but for our children, all of them. The sun was beginning to set over Seattle, casting long shadows through the gallery windows. Lucas knew that the next few weeks would be decisive. Michael Thompson had power and influence, but he had underestimated one fundamental thing: the power of true love and truth. Tomorrow, Lucas said, we start gathering evidence. It's time for Michael Thompson to learn that not everything can be bought or controlled. The morning that would forever change everyone's fate began with an insistent knock on Lucas' apartment door. He had spent the entire night reviewing documents with Amanda, looking for evidence that could expose Michael Thompson's questionable practices. The sound of the knock took them by surprise, causing Amanda, who was asleep on the sofa, to startle awake. Mr. Crawford, the deep voice on the other side of the door, belonged to a bailiff. We have a search and seizure warrant. Lucas exchanged a quick glance with Amanda before opening the door. 3 officers entered, followed by none other than Michael Thompson, his arrogant smile contrasting with the chaos that was taking place. I'm sorry to interrupt your intimate moment, Michael said, his eyes lingering on Amanda, who was still wearing her clothes from the day before, but we have urgent matters to attend to. What kind of games are you playing, Michael? Amanda stood up, her voice firm despite the fear evident in her eyes. No games, darling, just protecting my interests. He handed Lucas a document, a court order preventing you from going near Rebecca or my future son. Lucas felt his blood boil. Your future son? Do you really think you can? Actually, I can, Michael interrupted, pulling another envelope from his jacket. And I also have here evidence of financial irregularities at Amanda's gallery during her tenure in New York. Fascinating how certain transactions can appear suspicious when viewed through the proper lens. The sound of the elevator opening in the hallway caught everyone's attention. Rebecca emerged panting, followed by Nathan Parker. "Enough, Michael," Rebecca declared, her voice firmer than Lucas had ever heard it. "Show them." Nathan stepped forward carrying a folder. "I spent all night organizing this, Mr. Thompson. I think you recognize these documents." Michael paled visibly as Nathan began to spread papers out on the coffee table. They were contracts, bank transfers, and emails detailing an elaborate money laundering scheme through Thompson's real estate ventures. "How did you?" Michael began, but Rebecca interrupted him. "Have you forgotten that I had access to your private office, that I knew all your codes?" She approached Amanda. "Forgive me for not doing this sooner. I was blind." Amanda took Rebecca's hand, a gesture that surprised everyone. "I was blind once too." Michael laughed, but his laugh had a tone of desperation. "Do you really think you can take me down? I have connections. You have 24 hours to drop all charges and court orders," Nathan declared, his voice professional and cold. "With this evidence, go straight to the FBI." The silence that followed was deafening. The bailiffs, sensing the change in the dynamics of the situation, began to quietly withdraw. "This isn't over," Michael growled, heading for the door. "Yes, it is," Lucas replied, finally finding his voice. "And you're going to walk away from both children. They have parents who love and protect them." After Michael left, Rebecca collapsed on the sofa, silent, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Lucas, for everything. I should have seen through it from the start." Amanda sat down next to her, still holding her hand. "Sometimes we need to go through certain experiences in order to grow." Nathan started organizing the documents. "I'll prepare everything to present to the prosecutor, if necessary." Michael Thompson walked get away with this so easily. The next few hours were spent unraveling the legal tangle that Michael had created. Rebecca decided to move temporarily to her parents' house on Mercer Island, away from Michael's influence. Amanda and Lucas began to plan how they would unite their lives and their future families. At dusk, everyone gathered on the terrace of Lucas' apartment. Seattle glowed under the pink sky, the Space Needle a silent sentinel, witnessing the beginning of a new phase in their lives. "It's strange," Rebecca commented, stroking her belly, "how we ended up forming a family so different from what any of us imagined." Lucas watched Amanda, who was chatting animatedly with Nathan about the plan for the gallery. His heart was filled with a deep love and gratitude for the path that had brought them there. "Sometimes the best families are the ones we choose to create," he replied softly. Amanda moved closer, wrapping her arms around Lucas' waist. "And the ones that grow through forgiveness and understanding." The sun finally set, drenching the city in shades of purple and gold. The lights began to flicker one by one like urban stars rising in the twilight. Nathan raised his glass of mineral water in a toast. "To the family we've created," he proposed, "and to new beginnings." Everyone raised their glasses, united not by blood or legal papers, but by something much stronger: love, understanding, and the ability to forgive. On the horizon, Seattle continued its eternal rhythm, indifferent to the dramas unfolding in its skyscrapers and busy streets. Lucas knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges in raising two children in an unconventional family, in dealing with the consequences of Michael's actions, in building something new from the ashes of the past. But looking at Amanda, at Rebecca, at the friends who had become family, he was sure of one thing: it would be worth every second. And so, under the Seattle night sky, a new story began to be written, not one of revenge or bitterness, but of redemption, love, and second chances. A story that proved that sometimes the happiest endings are the ones we could never have planned.